Okay, everybody, just to start out with a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Vienna, Austria, and this is the school I went to. It was called Akademisches Gymnasium, and a gymnasium compared to American high school is more like a junior college. So, academic junior college, where they taught us German, Latin, French, English, and Greek. So, it was language based school. It was right outside of Beethovenplatz, which is Beethoven Plaza, and Beethoven was sitting right there watching us. And we had some famous people attend our school. For example, Franz Schubert, a lot of the prominence of Austria that probably won't tell you anything, so I didn't put them up. This is what the inside of the school looks like. And it used to be a nunnery that they converted into this school. And so Harry Potter has nothing on me. I grew up surrounded by lots of art, traditional and modern. This is Gustav Klimt is one of my favorite artists, and this is his version of the Tree of Life. And then you have this is a picture of our library in Vienna. This is a picture in one of the castles, and in one of a Hofburg where they have a lot of the important people come and talk to the president of Austria and so forth. And this is the Austrian flag, by the way. And then, of course, the modern art. Everywhere the same. Right now in Vienna, it was always very multilingual because of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but right now in Vienna, they speak over 100 languages. So it has expanded quite a bit. I was surrounded by a lot of music. I played the piano. I tried to get into the music conservatory, but my hands were too small. I couldn't play any Liszt. So you can see you have here Johann Strauss, the famous waltz king, Blue Danube waltz, everybody knows that. And they made him look like C3PO when they covered him in gold. Then you have, of course, at the cemetery, there's Beethoven and Mozart. And then, of course, on this side is the Vienna Music Hall, Musikverein, where the Vienna Philharmonic reside. And every New Year's Eve, they have the Vienna New Year's Philharmonic celebration that you can watch on PBS, where they play a lot of the waltzes and celebrate the new year with Viennese music. And of course, the way I look is because of what I ate, what I grew up with. Apple strudel, schnitzel, pastries, dumplings with goulash, a lot of fun stuff. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about trying to give you some tips and some help in tracking your German ancestors. Now, I can't answer everything that you want to know in 45 minutes or train you in everything you need to know about German genealogy. It is massive, okay? But I can give you some hints, maybe some tricks, some tips on where to go, what to find, or where to find it, and where to find it. So, your census record says your ancestor came from Austria. Up until 1918, this was Austria-Hungary, okay? It used to be the Austrian Empire, but then in 1848, when Hungary joined, it became the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and that empire existed up until 1918, until after the First World War, when they took everything away from Austria, and this is what's left, this little white country that fits into, for example, the state of Utah 3 times and has 8 million people right now. 2 million of them live in the city of Vienna alone, or 3 million, I think. 9 million, yeah. And thanks to all the influx of refugees that we have. And my good little old Vienna looks more like Istanbul now. But anyway, so when you think of Austria, and this also, what I'm talking about also goes for Germany, border changes and so forth. When you think of it and you go to your record and it says Germany, okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on. Those were the languages spoken in Austria until 1918 that were in the empire. So you have all these different languages. And Kaiser Franz Joseph, he ruled the Austro-Hungarian Empire from 1848 until 1918. So And his famous wife was called Sissi, and everybody in Europe loves Sissi, the Empress Elizabeth, they called her. And he, towards the end of his reign, so to speak, he had completely lost touch with a lot of the other countries that didn't speak German, the people, the Bosnians, the Serbs, the Croats, the Poles, the Lithuanians. And it was just a real good melting pot and a real good place for revolutions and so forth, because people didn't want to be ruled by somebody that lived so far away. They had no idea how their people worked and how their country, or what they didn't even know what they spoke. So that pretty much helped the demise of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, besides the war that they lost. Now, what I'm going to demonstrate today is I'm taking some things out of my own personal genealogy that have helped me to find answers that were really difficult to find. So one of the first things that you do is you talk to people that you know. What do they know? How can I find out about that? And I'm pretty lucky that my mom is still around. She's 93 now. And of course, she grew up in Austria. She grew up in the part of Austria that used to be Hungary, but it's now part of Austria. And so a lot of that background is Hungarian, which I cannot find in Austria now because the records are where the places are today. So if you're looking for a place in Germany that used to be East Prussia, your chances are those records are now in Poland or in the Ukraine. Okay? So just being in that country doesn't mean that's where the records are now. They are where they are in the modern state or modern country. So I talked to my mom, and she told me about the story. She was born in 1933, the first year Hitler came to power. They were very poor. They lived in Southeast Hungary / Austria. And she remembered during the war getting packages sent from America, care packages. And I said, well, who sent you those packages? And she said, well, your grandfather, my aunt Hedwig and her sister immigrated to America, and their husbands that they later married. So they were all from that area. And I'm like, okay, let's see what I can find, Hungary, American, Austrian, okay. So here are some of the things that I did that might help you create a roadmap on what things that you can use to help you find the ancestors. So first of all, what did I do? I asked Mom, what do you remember about Hedwig Schmidt? Schmidt is my mom's maiden name. To make it a lot more complicated, which is English or German for Smith. Yeah. Okay, that's why I went to Hedwig's husband, because he wasn't a Smith. It was easier to find. Start a research log. Very, very important to keep research log. There are more handouts on the front desk. The research log, now if you're computer savvy, you can also create a Google Doc or something like that and keep track of what you're researching, where you found something, what is the record. This helps you to stop duplicating the work and getting frustrated when you're halfway into an entry and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I've already done that, or I've already had, been to this website. Okay, so create a research log. What am I going to do? The first thing I do is locate the birthplace of my grandfather. Now, of course, it's the same place where my mother was born. Tiny village, even today, of 250 people on the Austro-Hungarian border. Now, go ahead. I was able to locate in that small village. There was even in that small village, a Lutheran church and a Catholic church. And so I knew that my grandfather was Lutheran, so I was able to find the birth record there because, I just sent my cousin over to the church and asked her to get a copy. The next thing, find the birth date and the birthplace of his sister, Hedwig Schmidt. And so I was able to do that. Same village, same place. And then find her marriage to Karl Laschober. Now, Karl, how do I go about finding information about Karl? Because he was not from the same place, right? So the place where my mother and her family were born used to be part of Hungary, but is now part of Austria. Already explained that. The family was Lutheran, but no church records were available. So I had to go and find a birth date or a birth record and go to the civil registration office there, see if they had a birth record. Yes, they had a birth record, so I was able to get that. Now, next stuff. I got my grandfather all in one box. I got his sister. I got the birth date, the birthplace. Next move, husband. Okay, I know his name was Karl Laschober, Lashober. Now, where did Karl come from? So when did they get married? So I found the, I went into family search and I typed in Karl Laschober. And he's male, Austria. That's all I did. And family search sent me to this image here. This is the birth record in Hungary of Karl Laschober. And so I was like, well, wait a minute. It doesn't say Karl Laschober. It says Karoli Laschober. And then I'm like, oh man, the whole record is in Hungarian. So what did I do? I went to Google Translate and I typed in some of the words that are printed out and stuff like that. And with Google Translate, you don't even need to use diacritics. And it'll give you a translation of what you're looking at and so forth. So I was able to find Karl Laschober. His name was actually, where is Karl? The name. See, I'm still looking at the very top. Matthias was his dad. And then that was his dad, Matthias. And then I was able to finally find that his name down here, the given name, was Karoli, Karl. Okay, I got his birth record. So now I have Karl and Hedwig birth records for each, birthplaces, parents for each, because guess what? Birth records have their parents. And I have a place, so I know, okay, next time I go research, I need to put in this place because it's in Hungary and see what I can find. Can I find more people in his family? But right now I'm just concentrating on that couple.
You said his name was different when you found it in there?
Yeah, because see, I'm talking of the German version of his name, Karl. The Hungarian version of his name is Karoli. And I'm like, what? But then I was excited to see that name, but then when I checked the rest of the record, I'm like, oh shoot, the whole record is in Hungarian, not just his name, you know.
How did you know the difference between Karl and
Karoli.
Yeah.
When you put in, you can do a search for the name Karoli in Hungarian. In Google there are Hungarian, for example, male given names. And then it gives their comparison what they would be in English or German. You know, that's the way I do it. You know, it might take clicking on some websites that are not, you know, what I'm looking for, but there will be one that will have the comparison. Okay, this is the Hungarian name, this is the German of that Hungarian name or the English version.
If you're searching for that, if you were to type into Google, what do you call that? You know, you say Karoli, whatever it is.
Karoli. No.
I mean, what do you call that?
No, what I do is I type into the search, I type on the top, I type in and I say, okay, Google, male Hungarian given names, okay? And then what other German equivalents? That's just my search.
Okay, so it's not like you ask for
No, because then you'll get all kinds of famous people and all that have that name, and you're not interested in any of those guys.
Do you do it in Google Translate?
No. Google Translate just translates. The Google search engine will go through all the stuff that they have available, and there are Hungarian name lists out there for boys, females, males, um, and so outside of family search, and so there are other. You can use Google as well, because a lot of people put stuff online. People looking, okay, I'm going to give birth to a boy. I want to name it. What are the most popular names? That kind of stuff. That's all online. And it's also good for us to use because, it helps us to identify different things. So, okay, now I have the birth record, but guess what? It's not a church record. It's a civil registration record, which for me, I don't care if it's a church record or a civil record. I just care. I have a record of his birth, black and white. I have his parents. I can go from there. Now, I know you can also go into Family Search. They have a Hungarian word list. Again, use the wiki, the Family Search wiki. When you click on the wiki, it says, okay, which country do you want to research in? So it has Europe, it has South America, it has Asia. So you click on Europe. When you click on Europe, all the countries in Europe show up. You go down to Hungary, click on Hungary, and all the information Family Search has about Hungary will pop up on that page. On the side bar, it will say, okay, what do you want? Gazetteers, birth records, marriage records, Hungarian word list. And then they have a word list basically of Hungarian words and translated into English. So you can find out what the Hungarian word is for birth, for death, and so forth. That will help you too. And then you can use that for either translating. Yes?
Is there an AI yet that'll just take that whole page and translate it?
You could. I haven't done it with AI yet. I don't think AI is quite that far yet with Hungarian because they're still trying to figure out all the different handwritings.
Okay.
Now, there might be this has been indexed by a person, not by AI.
Is that the same for German then?
It's the same for German. Right now, German, my heritage, I've just worked on a project with them for doing German newspapers because the font, and it was pretty similar. The page setup, everything was similar. The problem they're running into is the handwriting because when you look at German records, you look at one record, you're looking at 4 different types of handwriting. You've got Fraktur, you've got Sütterlin, you've got cursive, and you've got Latin. And so for AI right now, that's still really hard to do. And so they asked me to come up with samples, and this was just for newspapers, not records yet, and transcribe the record and see how well AI did compared to what I transcribed. So they are working on it, but German records are probably the most difficult ones to run through AI, and that might take another year or so. Once they get the newspaper stuff down and they can make corrections and fine tune it, I think that's going to be the next big thing. So
Compared to the translate that already happens.
The indexing.
And yeah, that like if you were to drop that whole thing into translate, or can translate even read this stuff?
Google Translate.
Sorry, Google Translate.
Yeah. You know what? I don't really know. I haven't tried it. I just type in, what I see on the most important words and then I go from there and then backtrack later because I'm just looking right now for this class. I was just looking for Carl. I wasn't interested in anything outside because I wanted to use him for my class. When I go back, maybe a different story. So anyway, I found Carl. Now, when did he come to America? So, okay. He came to America sometime, right? I went to Ancestry, because only Ancestry has the Hamburg passenger list. So I typed Karl Laschober into the Hamburg passenger list on Ancestry. And then male. Where did he live? Where did he come from? Austria. That's all I did. I didn't type any other stuff in there. I typed in his birth year, 1898. That was it. So name, birth year, Austria, male. That's all I knew. And then went through the Hamburg passenger list, and apparently, whoops, next slide. Apparently, look who's at the very top. Carl came to America on the 16th of June in 1921. That's what the manifest, the passenger on the top, the ship's log tells me. He came to America in June of 1921. He came on the ship Mount Clinton. So I found a picture of the ship. And I'm like, man, can you imagine coming on that from Europe in 1920 to America? That must have been not the Titanic, that's for sure. But anyway, so I added that as a rich content to.
Gratefully not the Titanic.
Yeah, gratefully not the Titanic. No, I'm just thinking of the luxury and, yeah. But so I know when he came to America, and I know that my mom said that their packages came from Chicago. So I said, okay, 1921, America, Chicago. What's the next year for census records? 1930.
In some cultures, the family that started coming over to the United States, they would often go back to bring another family member. Did the Germans do that or the Austrians do that?
No, not really. They just, like a lot like the Irish, they would save up their money and then send the money to their relatives and have them come over by themselves. I don't think they wanted to do that journey again. In some cases, I don't know. And then it was a money thing because they'd have to pay double. They'd have to pay for themselves and for the people they want to bring over. And they didn't probably have that money, so they just sent for those people that they wanted to come over and to join them.
I was told my Swedish relatives, women couldn't travel by themselves. So a brother did go over and back
Yeah.
for two sisters, which
Yeah.
was nice.
Well, every culture was
It's
different. My great grandmother, she ran away from home twice. One time she stole her neighbor's passport and tried to come to America through Hamburg on that and got caught. And then she tried again. She was 6 months pregnant and got caught. And she never made it to America because she thought the streets here in America were paved with gold. And so she never made it. But she was always ranting and raving and just dumping on her husband. He needs to go to America. So he eventually did go to America, but came back after a few years and told her there's no such thing as streets paved with gold, and you just have to work as hard there as you have to work here. And so she was not happy with him. Did you have a question, Jeff? Okay, so now I know. He came 1921. Then I thought, okay, 1921, when did he become an American citizen? Now, when I looked at that, it said that he became an American citizen in March of 1928. So he did not wait long. So he became an American citizen in 1928. And I thought, does it give me any more information on his birthplace? Let's say I don't have a birth certificate. Does it give me any more information about his birthplace? It tells me that he was born in Stuben, Austria. Well, Stuben was in Hungary and had a different name. So I have to find out what is Stuben called in Hungary, and that's where I can go. Now this place is part of Austria, but so if you don't really have a place that you know for sure, naturalization records are great. Census records are great to at least point you in which country you're going, right? This record, I think I found on Ancestry.
But that's the first paper, the Declaration of Intent. The second and the third papers do not have as much information.
That's right.
As the first paper.
But the third page might have a picture.
That's true, depending on the year.
Yeah, depending. I didn't want to, have a presentation this long, so I just concentrate. Yes.
So I see that's in Illinois,
Mhm.
and that's where. So do you have to go to each state?
No.
How do you find that for?
Now
if your person is in Pennsylvania, let's say, and they put in their declaration, their naturalization papers, which is their declaration. Will it just be in Pennsylvania, or is it?
No, it will just be in Pennsylvania.
So you have to go to each state to see where they are. If you
Yeah.
don't know where they are, you have to kind of.
Yeah, you have to put in the search. You know, you might put in Pennsylvania to see. I think these records all came from NARA, and Ancestry has them. So they're in the National Archives in Washington, and so they cover every state.
So you could just put in the person's name
And
maybe put in Pennsylvania.
yes,
Give them a bit more of a clue.
yeah.
then
And
maybe
if those
can-
records have been digitized, Pennsylvania will show up as naturalization place. And remember, they probably had to go to a bigger town if they lived in the country. They couldn't just go to the mayor's office. It had to be
Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh would be
probably. Yeah, I'm not sure. Don't pin me down on that.
Okay.
But I think that's
Okay, if you're looking for like their birth record and they change, like.
they changed their name.
Like it was Russian, but now it's Ukraine. So would the records be like where the town was, or would it, you'd go to, or would it be which government? You know, do they keep the records there?
If let's say if the town used to be in Russia and is now in the Ukraine, the records would be in Ukraine.
Okay.
Right? Remember, the borders after World War II, they pretty much stuck where they are now. And so after World War II, most of those places have those original records. So you won't find those Ukrainian records in Russia. It's like you can't find East Prussian records in Germany. You'd have to look at Poland, you know. Okay, so then I said, okay, what next? I went, so 1928, next census was 1930. Found him in the 1930 census for Chicago again. And where did they come from? Austria. Nothing about Hungary in there, right? So again, and then they came and they had 2 children that were actually born in Illinois. So that is just a little roadmap to show you how you can use certain records to backtrack. And a lot of those records are available on Ancestry and Family Search. For example, the civil registration record I found on Family Search. I didn't even know that they had those. But I just tried, put in the name. If I wouldn't have found him in Family Search, I would have gone to Ancestry and see if they had a little bit more information. Now, Ancestry, maybe not, but I know that MyHeritage has a lot of European records. Maybe try there. Maybe try Carl with a C, Carl with a K. Because here in America, look how they spell his name. With a C. They don't spell the German version. And yes.
Along that same lines, it's important, I think, to understand that many countries had naming conventions. So in Germany, about 90% of all males' first name was Johann.
That's right.
And so if you're looking, but they call themselves
A different
by
name.
their middle name or
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a German birth record and it's male, it's not likely to be Georg or George.
Oh, you
It
could
would
add
be Johann.
Han, Georg. Yeah.
And so I'm assuming every country may have naming conventions.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, female German names weren't as, was usually Maria or Margaretha.
Yeah. And you have to remember, starting with Rome, you go north, very Catholic. Austria, very Catholic. Southern Germany, very Catholic. Then you go up to Baden-Württemberg and those places, suddenly it's less Catholics, more Lutherans. The further north you go into Scandinavia, there are more Lutherans than Catholics. And the Catholics, they had a name day for every day of the year after a saint or something like that. So not only was Maria a very popular name because it was the Virgin Mary, And you will find males that have the name Maria as a second name. Joseph Maria, very popular. Maria Josefa, very popular. Or they named him after the emperor, Franz Joseph or Elizabeth. And on top of that, they would name it after the father, then came the grandfather, and then maybe, if they're very Catholic, the name that the Catholic Church gave that day, Louise, Katharina, you know. And so you will sometimes find German birth records that for the children have 4 or 5 given names. And hard to tell which name they actually went by, because the other 5 kids had probably similar names, started out with Maria and so forth. You know, and you think it's the same person, but it's not. So you have to take that into consideration too. If one child died and, for example, was named Maria Elizabeth, the next girl child that was born, guess what? Maria Elizabeth. They just reused those names. Okay, so leaving Germany now, leaving Austria now, going into Germany. Germany didn't become Germany until Otto von Bismarck united all the different duchies and kingdoms and so forth into one German empire in 1871. So before then, the records were all kept in those little duchies and Duchy of Saxony, you know, Kingdom of Bavaria. They were all their own little kingdom. They were their own little thing, their own little territory, their own little country. Otto von Bismarck came along and said, you know what, this is ridiculous. So he united everything and still divided the country into East Prussia and West Prussia. East Prussia covers mostly Poland, Ukraine, some of those areas that Austria didn't cover. So where do you go in Germany? Okay. Oops, wrong arrow. Sorry. What the?
So you said it was divided into Germany and Prussia?
Yeah, so when you look, you have East Prussia to the very east of Germany that is now Poland. And then the rest, you had West Prussia, and then Pomerania, Lauenburg, Brandenburg, province of Saxony. All that became the German Empire. Then you had, for example, talking about naming customs. Schleswig-Holstein was really close to Scandinavia. So guess what? They used patronymics, even though they were Germans. So all that comes into play when you're researching. Now let's see if I do this. Yay, I got the right one. So again, locating the place. Where is that village or town now? How do I find out about that place? Gazetteers. Gazetteers, for example, Maya's gazetteer was my first purchase for Ancestry. Is the gazetteer to go to find out where that place was then in Germany, up until 1912. It'll tell you where that place was. Okay, was it in Prussia? Was it in Bavaria? You know, which state was it in? Now, Maya's is very hard to read. And so somebody had the bright idea to make it easier for English-speaking people to read. And so I think I put that website on there. It's called myersgaz.org. It's on your handout, I think. Is it on your handout? But if you want to just write it down just to make sure, it's called myersgaz, one word, .org. MEYERSGAZ.org. And what they have done, they have taken the entry out of the Myers Gazetteer and put it into English and translated what all the different things in that entry mean. So it's a lot easier to handle than trying to figure out, having to read the old Fraktur font and trying to figure out, what am I looking at? You know, it looks all like scribbly lines to me. But myersgas.org is an awesome resource as well. And you can just type in, you don't have to use an umlaut or diacritic. You can just type in and see what comes up. Now, the hard thing about that is also that sometimes, for example, if your place that you're researching is called Königsberg, right? Königsberg translated means King Mountain, but anyway, there might be 20 places in Germany named that way, and so it goes down until the smallest place that might have only 2 to 3 houses named that way. So that's the one big thing, that they like to name their places, and sometimes you run into the same place mentioned 20 or 30 times if it was a very popular name.
So if you're looking for, say, Bolsbach, Bohlsbach, Baden, Germany,
Yeah.
in 1830s.
Yeah, you have to try Myers. I don't know exactly when it begins. I would just put the town in there in Myers.org. Yeah, that's all you need to put in. Then it'll throw out and say, okay, I found a Bolstock in this place and I found a Bolstock in this state. But if you know that's in Baden, you can disregard the other ones and just click on the one that says Baden.
Well, I know they were there in 1830s.
Yeah.
Probably before that.
Yeah, well, if you're going to be lucky to find records around that time, because you'd have to remember Europe had a 100-year war, 30-year war, 7-year war. Napoleon came through. When Napoleon came through, he made everybody stop doing church stuff because he hated the church. That's why he even crowned himself emperor. He didn't let the Pope do it. So what did he do? He totally said the church will no longer keep records of birth, marriages, and deaths in your towns and villages. The mayor is now the person responsible for keeping those records. So those are all civil registration records during the reign of Napoleon, the 12 years or so? Now, he hated the church so much that he decided to change the names of the months. His year started in March, the spring month. Not only that, I'm Napoleon year, rule 1, Napoleon rule year 2, Napoleon rule year 3. So he renamed the months: spring month, summer months, autumn month, harvest month, winter month. So when you look at a record in Germany, when Napoleon was there, it will tell you 12 niveaus 7. You're like, what kind of a date is that? Well, it was the 12th day of the month of Nivelles, spring month, in the year 7 of Napoleon's rule. So you take that, you plop it into Google, and there are French Republican calendars that will convert it to a regular date for you. So he would, 17, I don't know for sure. But once he was the one that first started the civil registration records, actually. And some states, when he left, kept them in addition to the church records. But then some went, oh, forget Napoleon, we're going back to the old system. Okay, and had the church keep those records until they converted to the civil registration records as well. Okay, so.
So you're saying the mayor's office
Mm-hmm.
is the one to go to instead of the Catholic Church?
Yes, yes.
Or the Lutheran Church?
Mm-hmm. Not only that, but in the very beginning of the record, if it's in French, it will give the name of the mayor, the town of the mayor, and the witnesses coming to the mayor to tell him about the birth. So you have to be careful to go down to the middle of the entry where it actually states the father, the mother, and the son. A lot of people think the first people mentioned in any record are the parents. And so, no. They have this floral language of all this yada, yada, yada. In the French Republic in the year 7, this person appeared to me. He aged so-and-so. He's he's a tailor. He's a farmer. All this starts before you actually get to the actual birth record. And then usually the child is at the bottom. So again, those records are mainly for parts of Elsass-Lothringen, the Alsace, which constantly switched between Germany and France, right? Now they're French. Northern parts of Baden-Württemberg, Germany, wherever Napoleon went on his way to Russia. So that's something to, I don't know how you're going to run into it, but that might be something in the back of your mind that you want to keep and say, oh, yeah, whoa, French. Now, Napoleon was here. Okay? So then again, Meyer's Gazetteer, Meyers-Gaz.org is a great place to go that I explained. Just pop in the village, and then if it's in the Meyer's Gazetteer, it will pop up and tell you exactly where. And from there you can go and say, okay, do they have a Catholic church? Yes. They probably have church records. Pop that name in and see if it's on Family Search or Ancestry. Do they have church records there? And go from there. For Austria, again, there are several different websites. And I told that before in the other class that, and I don't know if I've mentioned it here, about the Austrian Archbishop that started digitizing the pictures. And because a lot of the, not just genealogical records, but that people came for their doctorate and stuff and went through the archive and were touching all these important Magna Carta, all these important documents. And he was like, from the 14th, 15th century. And he's like, we're going to lose these documents. So he started with his little camera to digitize them. Then he came to the Catholic Church and said, please, Then they gave him some money. He expanded it. Then he got the EU on board. And the EU has funded pretty much all the digitization of these records. And because the EU funds it, the Catholic Church has to put them online for free or they lose the funding. So what does that mean for us? Right? Well, we'll just find out in a minute. But first, I'm going to lighten the mood with a little joke. Hier kommt viele Leute. Ach, wahr. Martha was upset that the German website was in a foreign language. Okay, now back to our records. This is the website that this little Catholic archbishop started. It's called Matricula, which is Latin for church book. Matricula is an predominantly Austrian site, but I just wanted to show, I have a link on your spreadsheet, on your handout for that. I just wanted to show you, point out something. Austria, they digitized 2,790 parishes. Austrian Catholic records have been completely digitized. Catholic records, not Lutheran, Catholic. Okay, so Austria is done. Where do we go next? Germany. Look how many parishes they've already digitized in Germany. 5,356. They started with Bavaria, and they're going up north. So that's Italy. That's a completely different kettle of fish.
Will they go into the Lutheran churches though?
No. The Lutherans are digitizing their own stuff, but most of their, like Archeon, and I have a link on there to that, archeon.de, they charge for looking at images, where this website does not. And again, Catholic records. Maybe in the future they'll come on board with Matricula, because there are a few Lutheran parishes in there. Okay, so then.
So is that in the handout?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, the website is in German, so you have to go to the top and click English, okay? And then when you go in and you click English, you click on this little icon here that takes you to the records, okay? Right, this one here. This is the search, and this is for all the different collections, but you don't want to click on this because you won't understand anything that they're talking about. I don't. But this is the one that you want. You click on this, and then this page comes up with all the different countries that they're currently working. They've got some Serbian in there already. They've got some Slovenia in there already. Italy, they have one. Now, Italy has pretty much, Family Search has done a lot of Italian index. They've indexed a lot of Italian because some of my best friends were Italians and they work for Family Search. That's why they have all of their collections there. So a lot of stuff has been indexed on Family Search. And Luxembourg, Bosnia-Herzegovina, these were, interesting enough, all places of the former Austro-Hungarian Empire. And the good thing is that some of these records are kept in German because that was the official language. So you will find records that are in German and underneath Czech, Serbian, Slovenian, Slovak. So they kept them in dual languages. But that is a great website to go if you have Austrian ancestry, because it covers all of Austria, not just Vienna. Austria right now has 9 states, and so it pretty much covers all those 9 states as well.
So is there, you probably have it in here, and is there, if you're from Germany, is there great websites for Germany?
The only thing that I know for Germany are Family Search, and Germany does not have what Matricula has. Matricula is incorporating a lot of Germany right now.
Okay. And now it's where you might, like,
Right, but
family was Lutheran.
yeah,
So
but remember
you
those
might have a
records.
hard time.
Yeah, but remember, right now they pretty much covered all Bavaria and so forth. They're slowly making their way north. So if your family came from Frankfurt, they're probably not in there yet. They're just adding parish by parish by parish. But, you know, Frankfurt, they might have civil registration records on MyHeritage from that place. They might have records already on Family Search that have been indexed by volunteers, right? So anyway, if your ancestors come from Eastern Europe, like mine do, there's a great organization called FIEVS, and it's on the it's called Eastern European Family History Studies. They do a great coverage of all of Eastern Europe. There are interesting articles to read. They have a conference coming up in August in Salt Lake City that is online, where you don't have to travel to Salt Lake. They do Polish, they do Russian, they do all kinds of different areas. Family, yeah, it should be on your handout, FE. If not, just write it down. It's called FEEFS, FEEFHS.org. Eastern European Family, the Foundation for Eastern European Family History Studies. So FEEFHS. That is another place that you can go to.
And that's for learning? That's for classes?
Classes, articles, breakdown. For example, forgot his name right now, wrote a really good article about how to research Austrian military records, all different kinds of things on there. Civil registration records, Germany converted to civil registration, of course, during the French Revolution, 1798. And then when the troops left, they discontinued them. And some states started civil registrations in 1871. And the other provinces, Saxony, you know, all these other provinces, maybe 1874 to 1876. So if you can't find a church record, see if there's a civil registration record online. In Austria, of course, Austria, they didn't start civil registration records until 1938. So, you know, how do you compare German to Austrian? A German is like, Austrian's like, you know. Our German is different from German. German. It's fluid and soft. And of course, when Hitler came to power, what did the Austrian Jews? Come into our country, of course, have a glass of wine. Not one shot fell. Austrians. Okay, so if you know the words birth, marriage, death in several different languages, you might be a genealogist. And then, of course, our favorite, the Fraktur font. Perfect, right? But this is the reality. And again, there's some excellent German script articles online. There is a lady called Katharina Schober. She lives in Bend, Oregon right now, but she's from, I think, Minnesota. She has a website called Germanology. And she does all these seminars and stuff about handwriting, German records, border changes, etc., etc. However, she charges for her stuff, okay? Again, online resources are excellent for this kind of stuff. There are so many handwriting websites out there that can help you with. And what I told my clients in Bangladesh, for example, select a handwriting, Fraktur, Kurrent, Sütlen, take one. Try to copy the letters. Write your name, your address, your relatives. Once you know how the letter works, it might be easier for you to identify. If you're not sure, see if you can find that letter somewhere else in an entry. And there it says, this is an A for Anna. I know this is Anna, so this A must be that A. Compare. Don't stick with one thing. And of course, then Latin to German. The early records, because they were kept by Catholic priests, were in Latin. Just learn a few words. Girl, boy, mother, father. You don't have to know the whole thing. But if you know filius is son, filia is daughter, mater is mother, pater is father, you're already ahead of the game. Just learn a few of those phrases. And then lastly, but not least, no matter how kind you are, German children will always be Kinder. Well, thank you for coming to my class. Make sure you all have handouts.
Do we have a contact to email you or something if we have questions?
I have an email address, yes. My email address is, but just remember, I also work for a living, so it might be a while until I get to your question.